An overlooked but important factor to building wealth is having the right mindset. In this video, we will investigate the importance of having the right mindset. As a professional analyst, I've spent weeks researching and analysing the best money mindsets that will build you wealth. Reflecting on where I went wrong in my earlier years, stick around because I'm sharing insight I wish I'd known 20 years ago. Imagine you have a tiny, frail pot of money. You know it's precious, but it's small. You dream of growing it, but you're terrified that if you make the wrong move, it'll break and you lose everything. What do? You turn to two friends for advice, hoping they'll have the answers. Friend A, calm and cautious, tells you to put your money in a savings account. Safe, steady, but limited. Friend B, the risk taker, urges you to dive into the stock market. Risky, unpredictable, but with potential for huge growth. You're stuck. Both options feel like they could lead to disaster in their own way. What's the right choice? Psychologically, we don't like to lose things. The thought of losing your hard-earned money paralyzes you. You pick the safe option, a savings account. It feels like the only way to protect yourself from risk. But then something happens. You start digging deeper, researching, learning, and what you discover changes everything. You see, I was missing a key factor that led me to misunderstand what was best for my money and my financial goals. Let's take the price of milk. In 1984, the average price of milk in the UK was 21.6 pence. And I kept it in a savings account that had a 5% return. 40 years later, I take my money out to buy that pint of milk. By 2024, I would have £1.46, which should buy me 6 pints of milk with change to spare. But then I go to the shop. I can only buy 1 pint of milk and get some change. What happened? Now, if instead of putting my money into a savings account, I invested it into, say, the S&P 500, by 2024, I would have had £9.78. That would have definitely bought me more than 6 pints of milk, even today's money. Although my money was safe in the savings account, what those numbers could buy in the real world was going down. So in my attempts to avoid risk and therefore not losing my money in the stock market, I unwittingly almost guaranteed losing the value of my money instead. I learned that the real mistake wasn't in the taking of the risk, it was in not understanding the risk. Once I understood how to manage risk, I made smarter decisions and my money could start working harder for me. So I had to decide if I'd rather have my money safe in a savings account but almost guarantee losing its buying power due to inflation, or risk losing it in the stock market but has historically returned more even with inflation built in. That was a mindset shift that I had to overcome. To be clear, I'm not saying be reckless with your money, but to take calculated risks. When I was 8, I remember seeing a Barbie on display. Every time I passed it, I'll stop, pick up the demo doll, and imagine owning one of my own. I'll ask my parents if I could have one. But each time, the answer was the same. Money doesn't grow on trees. And so, this idea took root, that money was hard to get and had to be clung to tightly. I carried this belief for years. I grew up frugal, maybe too frugal. Then my parents began pestering me to buy my own place, to get on the property ladder, as they'd say. But that thought terrified me. When I finally bought my first home, I remember the first year was a roller coaster. Every bill, every expense felt like a personal crisis. I kept thinking, what if I can't keep up? The spreadsheets, the calculations, and the what ifs, all of it kept me up at night. But somehow, month after month, I managed. And then, one day, it hit me. I've survived. I've paid every bill. And for the first time, I was paying for a place that was actually mine. Well, sort of, if you don't count the mortgage. And then I realized something about my entire financial journey. If I hadn't let that scarcity mindset hold me back, I probably would have taken that step to get on the property ladder years ago. Who knows where I'd been? But that's the thing with a scarcity mindset. It convinces you that survival means staying in one place, when growth often means taking the next step, and sometimes that next step can seem a bit scary. Imagine being dropped in the middle of a dense forest, miles from home. There's no clear path and every direction looks the same. Now, imagine I appear as your fairy godmother and offer you a map. Would you take it? Some of you might want the adventure, trusting you'll find your way eventually. But most of you would probably grab that map immediately. That's exactly what a clear financial goal is. It's your map. Sure, you can try to find your way without it, wondering and hoping you'll get closer to your financial goals. But with a map, you have direction. When we get clear on our financial goals, decisions become easier for us. This meant prioritizing two things: saving for a comfortable retirement and traveling as much as we can right now. With that map in mind, we have a simple question we ask ourselves whenever temptation hits us. For example, say the latest phone is released. We ask ourselves, does this align with our financial goals? Does it bring us closer to traveling or building our retirement pot? If the answer is no, we move on. It's not about resisting every temptation. It's about knowing exactly where our money should go. Let's go back to our analogy of being lost in the forest. Right, so you have your financial goal, which is your map. And as you start to follow your map, things start to get in your way. You now come across a river which you need to cross. What do? If you knew how to swim, you may try swimming across the river. You may even want to construct a bridge. But what if you didn't know how to swim or build a raft or make a bridge? But what if you didn't know how to do any of those things? Chances are you'll have to find another way to cross the river, which means you'll be detouring from your goals. This is the same for finances, which is exactly where I was. I knew where I wanted to be financially, but I didn't have the knowledge about investing as I do now. So I took the longest detour with savings accounts because at the time that was all I knew. But by educating myself, I avoid any more extended detours. Let's face it, setbacks and failures are an unavoidable part of the journey to financial success. But it's how you respond to them that matters. When I first started investing and I saw my stocks and shares values drop, my heart sank. The old me would have withdrawn that money and ran to the nearest savings account. The new financially educated me understood that there will be peaks and troughs throughout my investment life. But the longer I stayed invested, the better my chances of riding out those peaks and troughs and averaging out to a profitable return. The new me had that resilience from changing my mindset from scarcity to abundance, educating myself into how money works, and having financial goals to keep me from straying. When you have resilience, you're able to bounce back from failures, learn from them, and move forward.